Hello everyone and welcome to AP Calculus. For our first summer review video, we are going to be reviewing how to graph a piecewise function, and in this video we're going to specifically be thinking about how to graph a piecewise function using tables of values. So before we begin, I'd like to start by reviewing something that you probably learned in Algebra 1, which is about graphing inequalities on a number line. And I'm going to show you in a second why that's so important to understand this so that we can do really well graphing piecewise functions. So what I want to do first is graph x is less than or equal to 3 on the number line. Now when we were in Algebra 1, we learned that we would put a closed circle on the 3, and we would shade to the left because less than means shade to the left. If we wanted to graph x is greater than -4, we would put an open circle on the -4 and then shade to the right. And if we wanted to graph the inequality -2 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 5, we would put an open circle on the -2 and a closed circle on the +5, and we would shade in between. Now, one thing that I would like to point out here is that even though this said x is greater than -4, that didn't mean that we started at -3. It meant we still start on the -4, we just use an open circle on that number. Now, I'm showing that and I'm pointing that out because that is one of the common mistakes I see students make when they're graphing piecewise functions. So let's take a look at this problem, and we're going to see how we can maybe use that idea of still including the -4 and just making it an open circle in this example. So in order to graph this piecewise function, we're going to make a table of values. Now what this says is that our function is going to be 3x plus 8 whenever x is less than -2, and our function is going to be x squared plus 4 whenever x is greater than or equal to -2. Now I'm going to make the table for the first function in blue. So when I say make a table, what I mean is a table of values for x and f of x, so inputs and outputs. Now this says that our inputs for this top function can be all of the x's where x is less than -2. A lot of students make a mistake here and think that that means start with -3. But just like we still started with -4 when we were graphing this inequality and we just made that an open circle, we're still going to start with -2. We're just going to make that an open circle when we graph it. So I'm going to put an open circle here to show and remind myself that when I use -2, it's just going to be an open circle because this is not equal to -2. Now if I include other numbers that are less than -2 on this list, what I'm going to have is -3, -4, and -5. Now if I take those values and I plug them into the top function, I'm going to have 3 times -2, which is -6, plus 8, which is +2. 3 times -3, which is -9, plus 8, which is -1. 3 times -4, which is -12, plus 8, which is -4, and 3 times -5, which is -15, plus 8, which is -7. Now for the second part of my values here, I'm going to be looking at the second function. So I'm going to be doing this part in red. And again, I'm going to make an input-output table, x and f of x. Now this says x is greater than or equal to -2. So just like when we graphed this inequality and we were less than or equal to 3, we still started with 3 and we just made that a closed circle. We're still going to start with -2 here. We're just going to make it a closed circle when we graph it. Now numbers that are bigger than -2 would be numbers like -1, 0, and 1. If I plug those numbers into my function, I get -2 squared, which is +4, plus 4, which is 8. -1 squared, which is +1, plus 4, which is 5. 0 squared, which is 0, plus 4, which is 4. and 1 squared, which is 1, plus 4, which is 5 again. Now I'm going to graph these. So I put an open circle here to remind myself that when I graph this first point, I need to use an open circle since I wasn't equal to -2 for the top part of my function. So I'm going to graph the point -2, 2 and put an open circle there. Then I'm going to graph the point -3, 1. Sorry, comma -1. I should probably read. -4, -4. -5, -7. Now I'm going to use a straight edge, and because I know this should be a line, I'm going to connect the dots. Now I'm going to put a closed circle at the point -2, 8. Then -1, 5, 0, 4, 1, 5. Now I know this should be a parabola, so I'm going to draw my parabola like this. All right, let's take a look at another example. So in this example, there are 3 parts to this function, and instead of saying x is less than -1, we just wrote it as an interval notation where we have -infinity, -1 open. So what that just means is x is less than -1. I'm just not including the -1. I'm going to do the first part of this in blue. I'm going to do the second part of this in red. And I will do the third part of this in green. So for the first part, I'm going to make a table of values, x and f of x. Now it tells me that for this first function, I can use all the numbers between -infinity and -1, and the -1 is not included. Now just like before, even though I can't equal -4, I still include it on the graph. I just put an open circle there. So even though I can't equal -1, I'm still going to include it in my list. I'm just going to make it an open circle when I graph it. Now numbers that are less than -1 would be -2, -3, and -4. If I plug those values into my function, I get -2, -4, -6, and -8. Now for my middle function, for my red function, it says I can use all the numbers between -1 and 2, where -1 has a closed bracket, so I'm including that. That's going to be a closed circle, and 2 is not included. It's going to be an open circle. So I'm going to have -1, and that's going to be a closed circle, and then 0, 1, and 2 would be an open circle. Now if I plug those numbers in, -1 squared is 1 times 2 is 2, and then I would have 0, and then 2, and then 8. Finally, for my green function, this says I can use the numbers from 2 to infinity, not including the 2. So I'm still going to start with the 2. I'm just going to make that an open circle, and then I'm going to have 3, 4, and 5. Now if I plug those in, I have -2 plus 3 is 1, -3 plus 3 is 0, -4 plus 3 is -1, -5 plus 3 is -2. Now I'm going to make my graph. So I'm going to graph -1, -2 and put an open circle, -2, -4, -3, -6, -4, -8. So I'm going to have a straight line like this. Then I'm going to put a closed circle on -1, 2, then 0, 0, 1, 2, and 2, 8. Now you'll notice that this graph stops at this open circle because it specifically says I'm only using this between -1 and 2. And again, there's an open circle here because that's not equal. It's not included. Then I'm going to put an open circle on 2, 1, 3, 0, 4, -1, 5, -2. And again, this is going to be a straight line, and it's going to keep going, so I am going to put an arrow there. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a great summer, and I'll see you really soon.